All right. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hey, Douglas, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you? Let me switch this back to where it's supposed to go. So, welcome everybody. Tonight, we're going to be talking to Mr. David Giard of Microsoft. He's going to be the speaker this month for the Memphis Python user group. David, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Douglas?
I'm doing fine as well. Like I said, this is kind of a novel situation for me because let's see here. Let me find the advertisement that I've got here for you. Also do this. You do a podcast video cast. Technology and friends that you've had me as a guest on there a couple of times, so I get to
Yeah,
return the favor and,
awesome.
and interview you for a change. So if you and what is it? You've got like 700 episodes, or
Oh, more than let me think. I should look and you can actually get it to it technologyandfriends.com.
oh, you
We'll just
can.
redirect
Ah,
you right there.
okay. Well, guess
And
what?
I am on episode 765, and
Wow.
this morning I recorded 766.
So technologyandfriends.com.
Yep.
Technologyandfriends.com. Go there and you can see the I think you've had me on there twice plus the other 763 that you've got up there. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
there's other 760 some. They're okay. If you want to check out the Douglas episodes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. But no, so this is really cool. So you're going to be so this month you're going to the meetup's going to be on Monday, September the 18th. It's going to
I'm
be
looking forward to it.
6 p.m. Central. So that's a week from Monday is what that's going to be.
Okay.
And then to RSVP, you can go here, bit.ly mempi sep23. And the talk is going to be data deep dive with Azure Data Explorer and KQL. But before we get into that, David, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and like what you do at Microsoft and other things, other
Well, I'll be
interesting
happy
things
to.
about yourself.
Yeah, I work for Microsoft, as you said. I just got a new title. I'm a partner solution engineer. I'm having trouble remembering that. Oh wait, no, partner solution architect. That's what I am. I was a cloud solution architect, and I still am, but I work with partners. So my job is helping our partners to get their offerings onto Azure. So sometimes, if you like, for example, if you go into the Azure Marketplace and you select a service there, many of those services uh, are like the SQL Server or some of the virtual machines, the Windows virtual machines. Those are created by Microsoft, but a lot of them are created by third parties, our partners. And so I help them to get those applications on Azure. I help our system integrators, our consulting companies, get their offerings available if they want to help people build applications, deploy them to the cloud. I help with that. So anything partner related, they need help with their architecture. That's me.
Cool. And you've been at Microsoft for quite a while. In fact, I think I saw you send a tweet out this morning, or I guess we call them still. I guess we still call them tweets. But but something about that 10 years ago today, you took a train ride to Chicago that for a job interview. So yeah, in fact, if I remember correctly, I think it was February. It was a Code Palooza in 2013 when I think we first met. So
Could
that
have
would have been
been.
about the time that you joined Microsoft. So
Code was one of the first conferences I joined. I went to after I joined Microsoft, so that could very well be it.
cool.
I started in October, so mid October will be 10 years for me.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was the right decision. It was the right place for me. There's been some ups and downs, but mostly ups.
yeah, I mean, of course, I've been for the past several years, I've been part of the MVP program, and
Yeah,
am really
rightly so.
I really like seeing how, some of the more, um, trying to not break the NDA here, but some of the more internal workings of Microsoft, and I really like what I see happening over there. So I think
Oh
I
yeah, thanks.
I think Microsoft has has the lion's share of talent in the tech industry. So
There's certainly no shortage of talent here. What I tell you, what I really like about the people I work with is their willingness to share that knowledge with each other. You know,
yeah,
there's an absence of egos in the sense that there's a lot of things that people around me are way smarter than me. You know, that I'm ignorant on a topic and they're very learned on that topic, and I come to them with, in this context, as a dumb question, a very basic question, and people are open to it. They're just saying,
oh yeah,
good question. You know, here's how to get started with this.
right. So you've been talking about you worked with the cloud and you still do and everything, and so that's part of what you're going to talk about this month, the Azure Data Explorer and KQL. So
Yeah.
what is the Azure Data Explorer and who might use it, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't familiar with it at all until about 2 years ago. My friend Andre Kasalika introduced me to it. We were on a project and we needed a database for our purposes for IoT. We were sending data from these self-driving vehicles up into the cloud, and it was lots and lots of data. And so we need a highly scalable data that can take this semi-structured data and handle it. And ADX, Azure Data Explorer, was the perfect tool for this because it's really, first of all, it's not quite NoSQL. It does have some schemas that you can enforce, but it doesn't have the enforced referential integrity that something like SQL Server has. So it tends to be really fast. If you want to get real-time querying out of it, it tends to be, hugely scalable, like petabytes scalable, massively scalable. So it was ideal for what we were doing. I started playing around with it and using it on this project, and it's just really a fascinating thing. And it was, at the time, I thought it was new because I wasn't really familiar with it. It had just gone to general release and become a product itself less than a year before that. But it's actually much older than that. It had been around for a few years internally within Microsoft. So, like, for example, application insights. If you do any logging and monitoring inside of Azure, that data is stored in ADX.
Mm.
And if you do any like those buttons that you see in applications sometimes, do you want to share your experience, with Microsoft? It'll send telemetry data back to the cloud somewhere. That's stored in ADX. And as you can imagine, those can be massive amounts of data
Yeah.
that's being collected in this way. So it had been used internally for a long time, and it had been used on just huge, massive projects. So it was pretty mature. Sometimes people joke about you want to wait till version 3 before they get all the bugs out here. But this one actually, I think they maybe really waited till version 3 was released until they actually made it public. I don't know what version 3 means these days when we're releasing
Right.
new every month or every quarter.
Now you've mentioned things like the telemetry data and the data
Yeah,
from self-driving cars and such, and I'd read that this is actually designed for or excels at, if not designed for, time
definitely.
series data and such. Is that the only thing that you could use it for, or are there other things that you could use it for?
Well, you can use it for just about anything. It's just that the queries that you're running are optimized for time series. So if you wanted to do something like logging, would be another good example. Just want to capture logs somewhere, then typically you're gonna have a timestamp on that. And often you don't really care about the logs or the IoT data for the entire duration for years and years. Usually you care about it for a particular slice of time. You say, when logging, for example, like troubleshooting an incident that happened yesterday, I want the logs from yesterday. And so those are great. But I mean, it has a whole query language built around it. KQL stands for Custo Query Language. And with that, you can filter and you can slice and dice, you can aggregate, you can sort, and a lot of the same things you can do with SQL. Most people are more familiar with SQL.
Right.
And so if you know SQL, you certainly read KQL right away. It's pretty intuitive that way, and you can learn to write it without a whole lot of extra effort.
So the Cousteau, where does that come from?
Oh, Cousteau it's a misspelling of Jacques Cousteau,
Okay.
and you got to misspell it so you can Bing
So
more easily.
so the whole Explorer theme keeps going.
Yeah, diving into data. That's where I get my thing here. That's my title of my
Right.
talk.
Okay, yeah, okay, okay, deep dive Cousteau. Okay, now I get it. Okay, now I get it. Yeah. Now this is not really a Python specific talk. It's a data
Nah,
talk, but Python, of course, being used very, 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 very widely in data analysis and
absolutely.
such. Can you tell us a little bit about the Python, about like the SDK what you could do like with the SDKs that come with it. One of them is the Python. So not necessarily how you could specifically interface with it with Python specifically, but just any of the SDKs, including Python.
Yeah, well, the SDKs are just like most Azure SDKs. They are just a wrapper for a REST call.
Okay.
And so what you can do with Python SDK, I haven't really used the Python SDK
Hmm.
very much. I once in a while I've got to open up a Jupyter notebook and write some Python code. But
Mhm.
generally, I'm either a Java guy or a C# guy. Um, but the SDKs are pretty much the same across the board, where they allow you to connect to an ADX, they call it a cluster,
Mhm.
write data, query the data. Um, that's essentially it. It's a very simple database structure.
Okay.
It's generally designed for just only inserting data. You can't go back and update
Hmm.
records afterwards, and which is, you think, wow, that's um, that might be a disadvantage, but it also contributes to the speed
Right.
of this data because they don't have to worry about going back and updating. So if you wanted to do something like where you need to go back and update, then really you would have a key and just say query the most recent record, things like that.
Right, but also for things like telemetry data and logging, that's generally,
With logging, you almost never want to go back and,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
update again. Yeah. So I mean,
Right.
I should point out that it's not for everything. It's not, you can't go back and update. If you wanted to have, just one of those basic forms over data and maintain, customer information, it's not really designed for that, or it doesn't have the bells and whistles like, Azure Data Factory and uh, you know ETL engines and things like that. It is just a data store. A data store. It's very fast. It's very scalable, and it has a robust query language.
Cool.
And I should point out also the query language has a lot of built-in functions for doing things like, you mentioned the time series data. If I wanted to compare a row with its previous row, that's kind of hard to write in SQL.
Mhm.
And yet there's a function in KQL that's prev. It'll give you the previous row record. So if you want to do a delta between, how much did this change from row to
Right.
row, you could have a calculated column that just does that without writing a lot of code to do it.
Cool. Real quick, I want to talk just a little bit more about this, but first, I do want to do a quick commercial announcement here for some other user groups that are going to be coming up. Let me get my screen over here. Um, coming up, actually, let me see here. I want to start with this one here. So coming up actually next week in Memphis, we are going to have the Memphis Data Pros / Power BI meetup. This one is going to be at the Microsoft office here in Memphis. It's usually at the university, but this time there's a conflict, so it's going to be at the Microsoft office. That's going to be actually a week from today, on September 14th. Going to be Zebra BI, which is, from what I understand, it's an add-on or plugin for Power BI for creating dashboards. So if you go to Meetup, you'll be able to see that. Also, an Azure group that's close to home. This is actually down the road in Nashville, the Nashville Azure user group. This is going to be, what is it, 2 weeks from yesterday. This will be on September 20th. And we'll be talking about the ISV Success Program at Microsoft. I'm going to be at this one because I do not know what the ISV Success Program at Microsoft is, so that'll be something to learn. And then on October the 2nd, we will finally have the inaugural meeting of the Memphis Azure User Group. We were supposed to have it Monday, but Chad had a medical emergency in the family, and so we just pushed everything down the road because he's going to be doing an overview of Azure, and I wanted to make sure that was the first presentation. And so if you go to memphisazure.com, the dates are off, but the presentations are still correct. I've got to redo that site, but and you can also find that on Meetup as well. So let's go back here. You said that you've done Java and C#. You've done a lot of different things, not just in technology, but in Microsoft. I mean, I've seen you do visualization talks. Talk about some of the other things that you do outside of Azure.
Oh gosh, I've been in this business a long time. I started out as a Fox Pro developer.
Wow.
I have a real fondness for that language. I'm not sure I think it's still out there somewhere. So people are
I
still working it.
think so. I have not seen. I mean, I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm sure there are still people using it.
Here's a scary thought. Maybe there are people using the code that I wrote like 40 years ago.
I think out at the university they still may be using some of the code that I wrote like 10 years ago, which yeah is well no, it'd actually be more than that. I know they were using it because that's when I left was 10 years ago, and I know they were using it then. But yeah, it's yeah, Fox Pro. I never really got into Fox Pro, but I do remember hearing a lot of good things about it.
It was pretty cool. It was that's where I learned SQL, where I learned about relational databases.
Right.
That was nice. But yeah, I've been 10 years at Microsoft, and I started out as a technical evangelist. I think I kind of my route to that position was when I was an MVP like you. I was
Hmm.
speaking at conferences, got to know the other technical evangelists, and they got to know me, and there was an opening there. I, I I told them, "Gosh, this is what I want to do. This is my dream job. I'm doing it for free now. I hear you can get paid doing this." And I did that for 5 years. It was amazing.
Hmm.
I got to meet folks like you, the folks in the community. They're just really passionate about what they're doing and sharing the knowledge. And I did that for a few years. Then I wrote code for a few years. I was an engineer, um, and then just about a year ago, I joined this partner team. And this has been a really nice experience for me. Really good team. The only disadvantage is I hardly ever get to travel to see my coworkers.
Oh, really? So you don't
Yeah,
travel that much anymore?
none. I mean, for a couple of years, nobody traveled
Well,
because
true.
of the
Yeah.
pandemic, and then the past year, they just we just don't. I mean, it's just kind of the company, or at least my there's just less of it these days, I should say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The office here opened up. It was a new one. They opened
Oh,
up a new one in October of 2019.
oh, bad timing. Oh my goodness.
And then
So
6 months later, it's
so they
like
were
shut
paying
down.
rent on that office that whole time.
Yep.
That nobody was using it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what's one thing that's exciting. I hope that I do get to travel for my job because the group that I belong to is called GPS, Global Partner Solutions,
Mhm.
and we used to be called GPS US because we stretched across the United States, and we just, as of July 1, became GPS Americas. We merged with GPS Canada, GPS Latin America, so now the entire Western Hemisphere, the partner team they're my peers, and so I am virtually working with people from Argentina and Mexico and
Wow.
Vancouver, and I want to go to Sao Paulo so bad. I want to go to Colombia. I want to go. There's so many places I haven't been. Right?
Right. Now you're actually in Chicago because
Yeah.
I see in the background. I see is it still called the Willis Tower?
Uh, I'm not really sure. It's I read somewhere the naming rights ran out. Originally it was called the Sears Tower, and
Right.
then
Right.
I'm not sure who Willis is actually, but I think it's the guy from the TV show, the little short guy.
Yeah.
There.
It's the tallest. That would be kind of ironic because it's the tallest
Oh
building in
yeah.
America.
I don't know. And I read that the name was, but the Sears doesn't exist anymore, does it? The company went bankrupt in Chapter
I think
11, right?
they've got like a dozen stores
Oh,
still open,
they do still exist. Okay,
and
so
maybe like two or three Kmart's. I don't know. Well, actually, I think Kmart's online now. I think
Kmart still
and
exists online. I didn't
I
know that.
think they
Kmart
do.
was I grew up in Detroit, and it's a Detroit area company,
Right. Oh yeah, that's right. That is. Yeah, it is.
but I thought they were
So
gone as well.
so what about to wrap up? So what about just about you? Something that you don't mind sharing about just about yourself that's not necessarily work or tech related.
Oh gosh, I will tell you that the best thing I've ever done in my life is I raised two boys to adulthood.
Hmm.
My younger son Tim, he works for Microsoft. He's in
Oh
IT. He's
wow.
a consultant for Microsoft. He lives
Mhm.
just a few miles away from me here in Chicago. My older son Nick is the head basketball coach at Kalamazoo College. He played college basketball at Michigan State, and then decided he wanted to get into
Cool.
coaching, and he's doing very well. So they both live not too far from me, and they both have grown into excellent young men. So I could go on and
Fantastic.
on about this topic, but I'll just share that bit with you right there.
Fantastic. Well, so the talk again is going to be data deep dive with Azure Data Explorer and Kusto query language. I
Yep.
didn't have enough room to put it all on there, so just KQL.
Yeah, and
Uh,
ADX is how people abbreviate Azure Data Explorer.
Right. Well, 80, I mean, KQL, you probably know, hey, it's some kind of query language, but ADX isn't as self-explanatory.
Got
it. So it's going to be a week from Monday, September 18th, 2023, 6 p.m. Central. It will be virtual via Teams, and to RSVP and see the link for the Teams meeting. This shortened link will take you to the meetup site. Again, Mr. David Giard, good to see you again, my friend. Thanks for your time tonight, and I'm looking forward to the talk.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank
All
you.
right. Talk to you later.